She held my hand at the hospital when they told me it was my heart. My daughter-in-law, I mean. She squeezed my fingers and looked at me with those soft eyes and said, "We're going to take care of you, Dad. I promise." I believed her. That was my first mistake. My name doesn't matter much to this story. What matters is that I'm 63 years old. I spent 31 years working for a trucking company outside of Columbus, Ohio, and 2 years ago I buried my wife of 34 years in a cemetery off Route 40, where they plant marigolds along the fence every spring. Her name was Beverly. She liked marigolds. After Beverly passed, the house got quiet in a way I hadn't expected. Not peaceful quiet, heavy quiet, the kind that sits on your chest when you wake up at 2 in the morning and reach for someone who isn't there anymore. Our house, my house now, I kept having to remind myself, was a 4-bedroom colonial on just over half an acre. We'd raised our son there, taught him to ride a bike in that driveway, built the deck in the back together when he was 12, and he kept handing me the wrong screws on purpose just to make Beverly laugh. My son. I'll call him by what I thought he was for most of his life. My boy. He's 40 now, married. 2 kids, a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old who calls me Poppy and used to fall asleep on my chest during football games. I love those grandchildren more than I have words for. That matters, because it's part of why I kept making excuses for so long. After Beverly died, my boy started calling more often. At first it felt like grief, like he was reaching out because he missed his mother, and I was the only person left who missed her the same way he did. We'd talk on the phone for an hour sometimes. He'd tell me about the kids, about work. He works in insurance, has a nice enough job. His wife, I'll call her what she is, because she earned it. I'll call her the architect, because she's the one who drew up the plans. It started small, the way these things always do. About 8 months after Beverly passed, my boy called and said he was worried about me. Said the drive from their place, about 40 minutes north of Columbus, felt too far if something happened. What if I fell? What if I had another episode with my heart? The doctor had put me on blood pressure medication after Beverly died. Grief does things to the body that people don't talk about enough. "Dad," he said, "what if we came to stay with you for a while? Just until you're on your feet?" I said I was already on my feet. He laughed like I'd made a joke. 2 weeks later, they moved in. "Just temporarily," my boy said, "just to help out." The architect came with her organizational bins and her essential oil diffuser and her very specific ideas about how the kitchen should be arranged. She moved Beverly's good china to the garage without asking. Said it was making space. I didn't say anything. I told myself she meant well. I told myself that for a long time. Those first few months, I'll be honest, it wasn't all bad. The house felt alive again. The grandkids were everywhere, Cheerios on the floor, and crayon drawings on the refrigerator and little shoes by the door. My boy was around on weekends. We watched games together on the couch. For a while I convinced myself this was what Beverly would have wanted. Family. Noise. Life in the house again. But the architect was always watching. Calculating. I see that clearly now. Back then I thought she was just efficient. Organized. Type A, the way some people are. She started mentioning things. Casually, over dinner, or while she was loading the dishwasher. "This house is a lot for one person to maintain, isn't it?" Or, "Have you thought about whether all this square footage makes sense for you long term?" Or the one that stung the most, delivered with a concerned tilt of her head. My parents looked into a retirement community near their place. They love it. People their age, activities, someone to check on them. You might actually enjoy something like that. I let those comments wash over me the first dozen times. People say things. They don't always mean anything by it. Then I had my second cardiac event. Minor, the doctor said. A warning. But I had to spend 2 nights in the hospital, and when I came home, something in the house had shifted. I could feel it the way you can feel a room that's just been searched. Everything in the same place, but not quite right. That's when my daughter-in-law squeezed my hand and made me her promise. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't find out until much later, was that while I was in the hospital, the 2 of them had a conversation. A serious one. About the house, about what would happen to it, about me. I found out by accident the way you find out most important things. It was a Tuesday evening in March. I'd gone to bed early because I was still tired from a follow-up appointment. Around 10:30, I got up to get a glass of water. My bedroom is at the end of the hall, and to get to the kitchen, I have to pass the top of the stairs. Their bedroom is on the 2nd floor. They must not have heard me get up, because their voices carried all the way down. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I want to be clear about that. I was just a man walking to his own kitchen in his own house, and I heard my son say my name. So I stopped. Dad can't manage this place on his own, my boy was saying. You've seen him. He forgets things. He gets tired. Another episode and he could. I know, the architect said, and the timing actually works. If we transfer the property into a joint arrangement now, before anything happens, he'd never agree to that. A pause. Then her voice, quieter, more careful. He doesn't have to agree to it. Not exactly. It just has to be framed right. As protection. As estate planning. He trusts you. He'll do whatever you tell him if you present it the right way. I stood at the top of those stairs for what felt like a very long time. My heart was beating hard. Not the dangerous kind of hard. Not the kind I'd felt at the hospital. This was different. This was something old and cold settling into my chest. The feeling of realizing something you should have seen coming and didn't. I went back to my bedroom. I didn't get my water. I lay in the dark for a long time, listening to the sounds of my grandchildren sleeping down the hall. And I thought about Beverly, and I thought about the marigolds, and I thought about my boy at 12 years old, handing me the wrong screws just to make his mother laugh. Then I thought about what I was going to do. Here's the thing about being 63 and having a heart condition and having just lost the person who kept you tethered to the best version of yourself. You stop being afraid of certain things. Not death. I'm not there yet. I still want to see my grandkids graduate and make fools of themselves at prom and all of it. But I stopped being afraid of confrontation, of being difficult, of disappointing people. Beverly used to say I was too easy on people, too quick to smooth things over and keep the peace. She wasn't wrong. I'd spent most of my adult life being the one who backed down, who compromised, who said it's fine when it wasn't fine. After she died, something in me got very, very tired of that. The next morning I made my boy breakfast, bacon and eggs, the way he'd liked since he was a kid. I poured his coffee. I sat across from him at the table that Beverly and I had bought at an estate sale in 1998, and I asked him how he'd slept. Good, he said. Really good. You? Decent, I said. The architect came down, kissed my boy on the cheek, poured herself some of that fancy tea she orders online, gave me a warm smile. Morning, Dad. Morning, I said. I watched them move around my kitchen with a familiarity that had crept in, so gradually I hadn't noticed until now, until it looked like what it actually was, which was ownership. They moved like people who owned the place, because they were planning to. That day I called a man I'd known for 20 years. He's a retired attorney. He used to handle workers' comp cases for the trucking company, and when I sold my company stock, he helped me set up a basic will. I trusted him more than anyone except Beverly, and Beverly was gone. I told him what I'd heard. All of it, word for word, because I have a good memory for things that hurt. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "How's the property titled right now?" Solely in my name, I told him. Had been since Beverly and I bought it in 1989. Good, he said. Let's keep it that way. But I want you to come in. There's some things we should put in place. I drove to his office the next afternoon while my boy was at work, and the architect had taken the kid somewhere. I told them I had a doctor's appointment. Another thing Beverly would not have approved of, the lying. But I was learning that protecting yourself sometimes requires a kind of quiet that looks, from the outside, like nothing at all. My attorney sat me down, and we talked for 2 hours. He explained things clearly, the way he always did. He told me that without a proper living trust, my estate was vulnerable, not to outright theft, exactly, but to the kind of maneuvering the architect had been describing. If I were to become incapacitated, without advance directives and a clear trust structure, decisions about my assets could become contested. My boy could petition for guardianship. Once someone has guardianship over you, they have significant control over your property. Is that legal? I asked. It's legal, he said. It's not ethical, but it's legal, and it happens more than people know. We set up a revocable living trust that afternoon. I signed the paperwork, transferring the house. My house, the house Beverly picked out because she loved the oak tree in the backyard, into the trust. The trust named me as the sole trustee and beneficiary for as long as I was alive and competent. My attorney was named successor trustee, not my son, not the architect. I also updated my will, my healthcare proxy, and my durable power of attorney. Every document, every line, every decision, made that afternoon, alone, with someone I trusted. I drove home and made dinner and said nothing. That part took more out of me than I expected, not the legal work. The coming home and sitting at the dinner table and passing the salad and listening to my grandchildren tell me about their day, and looking at my son, my boy, across from me and seeing for the first time what the architect had made of him. Or maybe what he'd always been and I hadn't wanted to see. He was a good father. I want to say that because it's true and because it matters. He was patient with the kids in a way that surprised me sometimes, given how impatient he'd been as a teenager. Whatever he was doing to me, whatever plans he and the architect were building, he loved those children. I believed that then, and I believe it now. It didn't make what he was doing okay, but it made it complicated in the way that everything involving family is complicated. A week went by, then another. I watched. I waited. I listened more carefully to conversations, to the way the architect would steer topics, to the way my boy would let her. I started noticing how often she mentioned the burden of the house, how often she brought up care facilities, retirement communities, assisted living. She had brochures. I found them once in the recycling bin, full-color pamphlets from 3 different places, 2 of them in the suburbs north of Columbus, and 1 out near Dayton. I didn't say anything about the brochures. About 3 weeks after my meeting with my attorney, my boy came to me after dinner. The architect had taken the kids upstairs for bath time. He sat down across from me in the living room the way he used to sit across from me as a teenager when he had something to confess, hands on his knees, not quite looking at me. "Dad," he said, "I've been thinking about the future, about making sure everything is set up so that, if something happens, things are handled." "What kind of things?" I asked. He shifted in his seat. "The house. Your accounts. I don't want there to be complications later. I was thinking maybe we should look at adding my name to some things. Just so there's no delay, no legal hassle if you ever—" He stopped, cleared his throat. I looked at my son. I really looked at him. He was wearing a gray pullover and he needed a haircut, and he looked in that moment more like his mother than he'd ever looked like me, which was the most painful thing I'd felt in months. "I've already handled that," I said. He blinked. "What do you mean?" "Estate planning, living trust, all the paperwork. I took care of it a few weeks ago." He went very still. "With who?" "My attorney." "I didn't know you were. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it's my estate," I said. "And I'm still alive." There was a long silence, the sound of the kids upstairs, the water running for the bath. My grandchildren's voices, cheerful and oblivious. "Dad, I heard you," I said, "the 2 of you. 3 weeks ago, Tuesday night. I got up for water. I watched my son's face do something I'd never seen it do before. Layers coming down, one after another. The concerned son expression, the reasonable man expression. And underneath them, something younger and caught and ashamed. "It's not— we were just talking about contingencies," he said. "You told her I'd do whatever you said if you framed it right." He didn't say anything. "That's not planning," I said. "That's not looking out for me. I know what that is, son." The architect appeared in the doorway. She must have heard something, or she'd been listening. Her expression shifted very quickly when she saw my face, and she looked at my boy, and something passed between them that I wasn't meant to understand but did anyway. "Dad," she started. "The house is in a living trust," I said, "solely in my name. My attorney is the successor trustee, not either of you." I paused. "I think you should start looking for a place of your own." The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd heard since the day we buried Beverly. My boy tried, over the next few days, to walk it back. He came to me separately, without the architect, which told me something. He said they hadn't been serious, that it was just talk, that he'd been scared after my heart episode and wasn't thinking clearly. He said he was sorry. He said it more than once, and I believed that he meant it, at least partly. But I'd heard what I'd heard, and I'd spent 63 years being the man who let things go, who accepted the apology and moved on, who didn't want to make things uncomfortable. Beverly had loved that about me and been exasperated by it in equal measure. I thought about what she would say now. I thought about it for a long time. I think she would say, "You can love someone and still protect yourself from them." They found an apartment in about 3 weeks. The architect's parents helped with the deposit. My boy and I barely spoke during those weeks. Short, careful conversations, the kind that are really just 2 people waiting for something to end so something else can begin. The day they moved out, my grandson, the 7-year-old, hugged me around the waist in the driveway and asked if he could still come visit. "As much as you want," I said. And I meant it. I meant it because whatever my son had been willing to do, those kids had no part in it. They were children. They deserved a grandfather, and I intended to be one. The 4-year-old, still too young to understand any of it, pressed a crayon drawing into my hand before they put him in the car. A house, big green tree in the yard, 4 stick figures outside. He'd written PPPY in letters that went 3 different directions across the top. I still have it on my refrigerator. That was 7 months ago. My boy and I have spoken since. Not often, not easily, but we've spoken. He called on my birthday. He brought the kids by for Thanksgiving. We sat at the table that Beverly and I bought in 1998, and we ate, and we watched the kids, and we didn't talk about any of it. I don't know what that means yet. I don't know if we'll find our way back to something real, or if we'll just perform a version of it for the grandchildren's sake, until one of us dies. I know what the architect wanted. She wanted my house, my savings, my years of work, my half-acre with Beverly's oak tree. She wanted to move me somewhere with activities and people my age and someone to check on me, which is a very clean way of saying she wanted me out of the way. She didn't get it. I'm still here, in my house. The oak tree is going to bloom again in a few weeks. I'm on my medication. I see my cardiologist every 3 months, and I walk 2 miles a day whether I feel like it or not, because Beverly would haunt me if I stopped taking care of myself. The house is mine. It will be mine until I decide otherwise, and any decision I make about it will be mine to make. If you're watching this and you're my age, if you have kids who've moved in to help, if you're hearing conversations you weren't supposed to hear, if someone has ever told you that the best thing for you is to simplify, to downsize, to let the family handle things, please, talk to an attorney. Not your family's attorney, yours. Have your documents reviewed. Know what a living trust is and what it can protect. Nobody who loves you should need to be added to your accounts without asking. I should have listened to Beverly sooner. She always said I trusted too easily. She was right about most things. I'm doing my best to remember that now, in this house, on this half-acre, under this oak tree while I still can.